Are you humming in the bathroom right now?
You caught me. The acoustics are better in here. This episode is sponsored by Hired.com. Are you searching for a new job? That can be stressful, scary, and time-consuming. Pushy recruiters try to sell you on roles you don't actually want, and the job boards make you feel like you're throwing your resume into a black hole, never to be seen again. And sometimes you go all the way through the interview process just to find out at the very end that the salary, offer, or company culture doesn't match what you're looking for. Hired is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform for full-time and contract opportunities in engineering, development, design, product management, data science, sales, and marketing. We make your job search faster, focused, and stress-free. Instead of endlessly applying to companies and hoping for the best, Hired puts you in control of when and how you connect with compelling new opportunities. After completing one simple application, top employers apply to hire you. And on Hired, you receive personal interview requests and upfront salary information so you can make informed decisions about what opportunities to pursue over a condensed timeline. Hired offers access to more than 4,000 innovative employers, including big brand names like Facebook and smaller emerging startups. The size and type of company you want to connect with is totally up to you. And we help you find new opportunities in 17 major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Open to relocation? Let them know. Your privacy and autonomy in your job search is of utmost importance. And if you sign up today using the show's link, that's hired.com/rubyrogues, you can get double the normal hiring bonus. That's $600 instead of $300. So go check them out at hired.com/rubyrogues. Hey everybody, and welcome to another Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel we have Dave Kimura.
Hey everybody.
Brian Hogan.
Hey everyone.
I've invited a special guest, and that's Eric Barry.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Now, I'm going to give a brief introduction to Eric. Eric, right after I got started podcasting, he turned over Teach Me to Code to me. So if you remember way back those days, and that kind of bolstered and helped build some relationships that eventually turned into this show, Ruby Rogues. Eric, do you want to give a brief introduction as to where you're at now and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. Well, as you can tell, I'm definitely a starter of careers, as I have pretty much taken complete responsibility and ownership of Chuck's success. So
I didn't do anything. It's all Eric's fault.
No, it was all me. No, actually, I've been really amazed and in awe of how far you've taken it. So great job. I am a software engineer. I've been working in programming since 98. Yeah, about 98. And I am most recently working at Skipio.com. And I have been a Ruby on Rails developer for, I think, 9 years now, since 08. So that's me.
Awesome. We also have a special guest, and that's Penn. He's the guy that works on the Ruby plugin for Visual Studio Code. Penn, do you want to say hi?
Hey, everyone.
Do you want to give us a brief introduction as to where you're at and what you do?
Oh, sure. My name is Penn Lv. I'm a software engineer on the Visual Studio Code team on Redim, and I'm also maintaining quite a few VS Code extensions. And one of them is it's about enhanced Ruby language support, and it's my favorite. I'm the 5th VS Code member on Dev Chat shows, but I happen to be the first one on Ruby Rogues. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've had Chris Diaz and Wade Anderson and Ramya Rao and a few other people from the Visual Studio Code team on JavaScript Jabber and on Adventures in Angular. So it's exciting to kind of see this come over here because I really like Visual Studio Code.
Okay, thank you.
So one thing that I'm curious about, just to kind of get this rolling, is what goes into building like a language plugin or a language setup for Visual Studio Code. What do you have to do in order to make that work in the Electron setup you have there?
So usually, when you try to build an extension for VS Code, it's actually just a Node.js application. So it has nothing to do with Electron, or, you don't need to touch the DOM nodes, whatever. It's not like other editors like Atom. You have access to the DOM API, but we don't. So it's just a Node application. We expose an API for you. Everything is run a separate process. So that's about how to build an extension for VS Code. And then you want to know how to build a extension for a specific language, right? So there are several categories for them. The first one is like formatters, and then linters or like colorization. For those of them, you can just write some, plain JavaScript. But there are two categories which are pretty difficult. The first one is a debugger. So the debugger is, VS Code has a set of common UI for debugging, which is language agnostic, like the debug view-let, the toolbar for you to step in, step out, and they are language agnostic. So we expose an API for you. So you need to write your extension, hook up the real debugger, like for Ruby, which is Ruby debug. Hook Ruby debug to VS Code. You write a debug adapter for them. And the last one is actually language server. You need to write a language server to provide rich, language experience like bundle references, go-to definition, and similar things. But for this one, you need to, VS Code has a concept called language server protocol, which I can explain later. And you need to write write an extension which follows the protocol and tells VS Code about the semantic information of your program and to make the experience really rich. Yeah, that's about it. Short description.
Right. So just to clarify one thing that you said, and I'm familiar with this after talking to some of the people who work on the TypeScript plugin, and that is that in order to get some of the nice features for the language, you actually have a Ruby process running somewhere that you talk to in order to do some of the syntax checking and things like that. Am I correct in that, or?
Oh yeah, you have to run that in a standalone process because you run a Ruby process to analyze your Ruby code, right? So you cannot run that in your Node.js or whatever process. Yeah, right.
So what's the goal then? First of all, I talk to a lot of people at a lot of different companies, and Ruby usually isn't the priority. So what makes the Visual Studio Code team in Redmond go, hey, let's write a Ruby plugin?
Oh, actually, it's another story. So Ruby for VS Code, the extension is my ticket to the VS Code team. So it's not another way around. Yeah. So I wrote the Ruby for VS Code. I wrote the extension actually for myself. And then I joined the VS Code team. But I'm still maintaining the extension as my hobby project.
So, Penn, how many contributors are there on the project? I saw that you have two of them listed, you and I can't remember who it was, but tell who all is working on this project with you.
So at the beginning, it was just me, and later on, I make it. I try to maintain the project in a community way. So there's a gentleman who's I can't remember his name, but his alias is HookieQR. He contributed a lot of features like formatters, linters, and some basic IntelliSense support to it. And then later on, we have, it's really a community. Right now, we already have 26 contributors. And, it's not just of them. There are a lot of others help me triaging those issues, help me answer questions on GitHub. So I think maybe around 50 to 100. Maybe some of them just come once. But I really like it. I say Ruby community is one of the best community. Everyone is so nice.
If you have that many contributors, what's your process on knowing what to allow and not to allow to modify this? Because you've got 200,000 plus installs on this plugin alone. How do you know what PRs to accept, and how do you stay on top of that?
So it's actually a good question. It's really challenging. Even though I learned Ruby for about 1 year and a half, I'm still not a professional Rubyist. I didn't Ruby at work. So for some of them, first of all, we have a lot of test cases. So first of all, you need to make the test cases pass, right? That's the basic thing. Mm-hmm. The next thing is actually my way of reviewing code is I will download the code. Append suffix to the URL .div and apply the div to my local workspace and review the code. So I will play around with. I'm not just looking at the code on GitHub and then merge. No, that's not my way. I will look into every piece of code, play with it, and try to understand what's going on. Even though some contributions okay, you don't support this Ruby gem package, and we add this kind of feature to support it, right? And I have no idea with this gem package. So I go and learn this gem package. know how to play around with, and then make it happen. If it works, I add it. So, but sometimes it's kind of, trouble because people add a feature, it works 90% of the time, and for the rest of it, it breaks, and that contributor doesn't come back, and I need to fix it myself, which is kind of hard.
Okay. So let me ask you, so it sounds like you are an extremely good maintainer, you're keeping the house very, very clean. How do you find time to do that? If you're digging into each one of those PRs, right now there's 3 PRs, but there's 70 issues on the project. So how many PRs do you regularly get, and how much time do you think it takes to keep that maintained?
First of all, I need to say sorry to all the contributors. So since I'm working on the VS Code, VS Code repo, I have too many notifications. So I always, can't get all. I just missed the notification from, my personal repo, because like every day I have maybe 200, notifications from VS Code. It explodes my, inbox or whatever, right? So my way is like, maybe every weekend I will go to, my repo, go through all of them. I have maybe 5 to 6 VS Code extensions out there. So I go through every one of them, checking those issues and pull requests. And I say the Ruby one is the most difficult one. It's not just look at the issue. It's not just TypeScript, right? If it's a TypeScript issue, I can go and fix it. If it's not, I have to sit down, have some tea, and learn Ruby. And Ruby is fun, but it's not easy to learn, and then try to fix it. So right now, I'm doing that pretty slowly, not that fast as before.
Oh, well, it's so much appreciated. And speaking as a consumer of this, I gotta thank you. Your code impacts people's daily work in their lives, and I think that it often goes unsung. So speaking for myself and others who are using it, we really appreciate it, and especially because you're maintaining this. You're the core maintainer. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
That being said, now I got a bone to pick with you. Not really, but
so that's life.
So I've bounced around on so many editors. I'm kind of an editor to what's the word?
Commitment issues.
I have commitment issues, right? But not really. So I do commit, but I commit language based, right? So for example, if I'm writing JavaScript, I immediately open up VS Code. If I'm writing Ruby, I typically go to Sublime Text. And sometimes I use RubyMine if I'm feeling super lazy. So the thing that I'd love to do is just use VS Code for everything. And now it's been coming along really well. Now I got to bring up one thing, which I know it's a hard problem to solve, or it would have been solved already. The indentation issue when you do a block. So if you say def foo enter end, and you type end, it doesn't reverse indent the end. It stays out. And so now every time I'm coding, I have to like arrow every single time I create a method, every time I do anything, I'm having to move that end back to spaces. Can you talk about that problem and why it's complicated?
So after I explain this issue, I think you will say you love me. So the thing is, the first time when Chuck, sent me the invitation to Ruby Rose, I didn't, RSVP immediately. The reason for that, it was, 2 months ago. The reason for that is I was working on the last missing feature for Ruby fans, which is auto indentation. So that was 2 months ago. So from last month, if there's an option called editor.autoindent. So if you set this option to true, and you are working on a block which is not, the block boundary is not brackets, right? It's def and it's kind of keywords, and you press END, end, and the indentation will get adjusted immediately while you type. So we already have that. How's that?
So it's a user error.
But the thing is like,
isn't it always?
With me, it is.
So the thing is actually, ISA is a kind of discoverability issue, right? We have this feature, we do release notes, but not all users can, look at those release notes, because we have a pretty long release note. Every iteration, we have maybe 20 feature requests and maybe 100 bug fixes or maybe 200. So it's not easy to discover that. But from next iteration, I'm going to make this open by default.
Awesome. That's great.
But if you feel like sometimes if you feel VS Code is not good enough, I say maybe RubyMine is a good option. Yeah, that's how I learned Ruby, using RubyMine, a real IDE.
Yeah, so RubyMine is really awesome. But I found that every time I start using RubyMine, whenever there's an update or a beta release, I'll go check it out again. And it's one of those things where I always find myself like, oh crap, I need to hurry up and do something. So I'll close RubyMine and launch back up Sublime Text. It just, maybe it's my usability on RubyMine, but I can't really get the grasp of the full-blown IDE. I just like my normal text editor. But I will say that Sublime Text is my definitely preferred one. But next is VS Code. I prefer VS Code over Atom or Brackets or Vim or anything else. I think it's really solid. And I just noticed a feature that is actually something that I've really been wanting from Sublime Text, but it's just kind of natively in VS Code. So whenever I do the Drift and Ruby screencasts, I record at a 1080p resolution, so I always upscale the font size within the VS Code, but the folders never get scaled up whenever I increase the font size on Sublime Text. It's just been one of those annoying issues, but VS Code does it natively. So I think I'll start using that now. That's like super awesome.
This whole discussion is pretty interesting because I have been going on my 12th year now of using Vim full time to write code, and I'm starting to see all of this. I started to see all this, people gravitating towards Atom, and my impressions of Atom were that it was just a behemoth, and it was slow, and I every time I interacted with it, it would just take too long for me to work on any of my projects. And so when VS Code came around, I thought, oh, it's another JavaScript-based, Electron-based editor. I have no interest in this. And in the last year, I've seen just this explosion of interest in it. And so I've been trying it out in the last couple of weeks, and I can't even put into words how impressed I am with it. So it's really kind of neat to see something different for a while. And I'm a little stuck in my ways, so I'm not exactly where I want to be with using it. But I just want to give a shout out to everyone working on VS Code for producing something that's really helping people. So thank you, Penn, for the work that you're doing.
Oh, Brian, do you use any Vim, plugin or emulator on VS Code?
Yeah, I am looking for one you could recommend, or anyone could recommend, really. There was one that was recommended to me when I opened it up, and I'm using that, but I'm kind of trying to figure out if there's ways I can do some additional customization to it.
Yeah, I have a really good recommendation for you, Brian. It's the Emacs key binding plugin.
No,
awesome.
we won't be doing that.
I've been doing that. I love it.
We won't.
How long did it take you to love it, Chuck?
About 2 minutes.
No, we won't.
Whatever.
We won't be doing that. I may play piano and guitar, but I don't want to do that when I'm writing code. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I haven't tried the Vim key bindings, but the Emacs key bindings are excellent. And yeah, there are some custom key bindings that I had pulled into my Emacs setup that I'm not quite sure how to plug into VS Code, but all the basics are there, and they're the ones that I reach for the most anyway. And so that's the other thing that I found with VS Code that is just tremendous is the plugin infrastructure and ecosystem there. I mean, they have integrations with Docker. They have integrations with several cloud providers. They've got integrations with all kinds of stuff. They've made it a priority, obviously, to integrate nicely with Azure. But, if you're not into Azure, there are plugins for the other cloud providers. And so, I mean, all the way up to I have a Docker container. I want to push it out to some service that will host it. A lot of that is seamless and really, really nice to have. So you just, it packages it up for you and off it runs. And it's really, really great.
Yeah, actually, I want to, recommend, a Vim extension for Brian, which is called VS Code Vim. It's my second baby, so that's why I recommend it.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I say the command, coverage is pretty high, even higher than some of them on other competitors. Actually, it's pretty cool. So that's my first task after joining VS Code team. At the time I was alone in China waiting for the visa. So I have 8 hours difference from Zurich team. I have 15 hours difference from Redim. So I'm a lonely man. So I'm working on this Vim extension with the community alone. Yeah, but it's pretty good right now.
Have you guys seen that there was a video, and VS Code is so interesting because VS Code actually was brought over from a different project. It was just simply an editor. And the VS Code project itself is using this editor and just wrapping it with the additional functionality, but like the file pickers and the management and that kind of stuff. But there's a screencast I watched recently, and I'll have to find it, where they actually walk you through creating a VS Code editor. It was fantastic. So I'll find that and share that in the notes. But have you seen that? Have you guys seen that?
I haven't seen the video, but having spoken with members of the VS Code team, I know that the editor is called Monaco.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. 5 years ago, VS Code team or Monaco team started with, a browser editor, which is Monaco. And like 2 years ago, we tried to move that onto desktop.
Yeah, Monaco is used in a lot of the Microsoft, documentation and things like that. And so you can do live code editing and things like that. And it's really cool. It's another cool project they've got going on. So do you do most of your work on this kind of thing in TypeScript, or is it some other JavaScript dialect?
We are all TypeScript. But at the very beginning, we wrote JavaScript. But later on, we are one of the first adopters of TypeScript, which really helps a lot. So we moved to, I think it's 2013. Monaco editor, was moving to TypeScript. And right now, everything in VS Code is all TypeScript. It's a pretty good language.
So how hard is so I've been doing React for a while, and TypeScript has always scared me away. I'm trying. Let's make it more complicated to write what we're writing, right? And it seems a very forward-thinking pattern where you're basically adding type checking. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're adding type checking to your JavaScript code. How complicated? I mean, how much of a commitment would it be for somebody to say, you know what, I want to actually add type code to an existing project or TypeScript? I mean,
first of all, it's scary. I have to admit it. But the way I see it is, first of all, the setup of TypeScript stuff is not that easy, right? So you are writing JavaScript, you are writing ES6 together with React. But if we want to, merge both TypeScript and React, the setup is not that easy. But there are several features can help you with the ramp up. First of all, if you are using Node.js application, Node.js packages, if they have TypeScript or typing support, you don't need to do any specific thing to make the IntelliSense happen. So in VS Code, we have this kind of feature called automatic type acquisition. So let's say you create a new project which uses a Express, the Express package, and since the Express package already has a typing file for it, so while you are writing your either JavaScript or TypeScript, you immediately have all the IntelliSense, all the correct autocomplete. That's what VS Code provides you. So this is one good thing you can have. And another thing is actually, you don't need to worry about, whether you need to expose the typing file to others if you are not building a library. So if you are going to build a library for others to use, maybe you should create a typing file. But if you are not going to do that, it's okay. You can just write your TypeScript or JavaScript, and you don't need to worry about anything. And another thing is actually, TypeScript is just a superset of JavaScript. So you can start from writing, plain JavaScript in your TypeScript file, and then, grabbing the typing part, which is the scary part, as you described, step by step, right? You don't need to go to TypeScript 100%. You can do that, gradually.
Interesting. So I've actually, I can't remember what it was. I was working on a project, and I think I think I was modifying a repo, an open source project, and my editor, my VS Code editor, kept yelling at me, and boy, it made me feel stupid. Come to find out, I ended up deleting the TypeScript config file just so that it would leave me alone, so I could feel better about myself for at least a brief moment. But no, the beautiful thing about VS Code also is how much it gives you insight into your code. That is the biggest reason I switched to that versus Sublime Text. It is fast when you type. The autocompletion is amazing. The hints and definitions of functions are unbelievable. And integrating with something like ESLint or TypeScript, it just gives you so much power. And of course, everybody likes the embedded terminal if you're working on a smaller laptop. That's kind of cool too.
Now,
so I got to ask you.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to take all the questions, but I've been really eager to talk to Penn. What's left on the Ruby plugin? So where do you see it going? What do you see that's left to do?
The last missing part, I think, is a good language server. I'm not sure if you are, familiar with, language server, the concept, but it's actually a language smartness provider. So telling VS Code, okay, at this position, this line, this column, the autocomplete, the suggestion should be whatever, right? So we need something to, provide this kind of info. So all the good IntelliSense part. However, right now in Ruby extension, we, Hooky QR wrote a simple, JavaScript version of the token analyzer and try to provide good IntelliSense for you. But that's not perfect. In order to make a perfect language server, we have to write that in Ruby because Ruby is so dynamic, and you have to use some maybe meta programming, technology, to get all the good information. So that's the last missing part. But comparing to other existing language server like the TypeScript one or the PHP one, I think Ruby one can be the most difficult one. Yeah, because it's so powerful. Yeah.
Is that currently being done in other editors right now?
Actually, right now, no one does that. So the only good editor or IDE who has, perfect or at least the best IntelliSense support is actually RubyMine. So JetBrains products, they share the same tokenization or analyzer, across all their products like PHP, Storm, PyCharm. They use the same technology, so they can provide, good IntelliSense to Ruby. But for other editors like Atom, Sublime, TextMate, or VS Code, we don't have that. So it's a shame. But
so does your work on VS Code translate to different editors? I know that Sublime Text, I think, is all Python, but Atom is also JavaScript, and I think they actually share the same core. Does your work translate to Atom as well, or are you in connection with the Ruby team on the Atom side?
Oh, actually, the Ruby team, actually Atom has, basic support for Ruby as well, just like the vanilla VS Code. But it's just about, colorization, indentation, and maybe formatters, right? But to make a good IntelliSense or good real, language support, there's too much work to do. And I think it's 2 months ago, the Ruby plugin for Eclipse, the maintainer reached out to me and asked me, oh, do you know whether there's a, Ruby language server out there, or you already have that? My answer is no, we don't have that. Right now, it's like everyone is waiting for the language server for Ruby, but no one is actually doing that. But that's on my list.
Dear listener.
Okay.
I was just going to say, dear listener.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask that question. So if we have people that are interested, what's the best way for them to start that conversation to work on that?
It's kind of beyond my knowledge right now. I'm not a professional Rubyist, but I know what kind of a Ruby language server should be. It's actually a parser, a language parser. So in the Ruby source code, the implementation of Ruby, there's already a parser there, but it's not good enough. The reason for that, in IDE or editors, you need a error tolerant parser, right? Most of the time the code you are writing is actually incomplete. So if your parser cannot understand that, right? If you write you are working on a function, the function is incomplete, you use Ruby to interpret it, or you use other compiler to compile it, it will just break and telling you, okay, at this position, it's incomplete, right? However, in IDE or editor scenario, the compiler or parser should still hold the grammar tree, the expression tree, and tell you, okay, at this position, you may want to pop in, several options, several keywords. So that's a language server should be an error tolerant parser for Ruby.
Interesting.
Awesome.
So one other thing that I've run into with different editors at different times, especially like with Emacs, I had to install a couple of different plugins and then, finagle things just a little bit, is if you had multiple types of languages in the same file. So for example, in a view in Rails, you have HTML, you can have JavaScript, CSS, and Ruby.
Wait, JavaScript in our Rails view? What's going on there?
The real world.
You need to learn about the asset pipeline.
No, the real world goes on there. There are times that I've had to do that too.
I've seen it. I've done it. I'll admit it. Yep. So if you have multiple languages or modes that you have to handle within the same file, how do you set up Visual Studio Code to handle that, or does it just kind of go, oh, I've got a script tag here, so this must be JavaScript? Like, is it smart enough?
It has to be. So users cannot customize that. So it has to be handled by the language support extension. So one good example is actually HTML. So like in HTML, you have styles, you have script, right? So we implement the HTML feature in an extension. So everyone can look at it. We can share the link in the show notes. And the extension has to, do tokenization and analyze, right now we are writing a script block, right? And then we should invoke, the language support for JavaScript, whether it's a simple one like just tokenization or a powerful one like TypeScript language server, which can provide IntelliSense. We launched all the, language support for that language. So, and even including like code snippet and formatters. But I say it has to be, done by extensions. And there's already a good, Vue extension, which is doing the same way as the HTML one. Like in Vue.js, you put everything into a single file, CSS, scripts, Sass, and then JavaScript, everything. So you need to do the, code splitting yourself, in the extension, and to make that happen. So I think that's the same case for Rails or Ruby.
Yeah, I think with VS Code, it's probably a configuration issue. One of the things I notice is if you do have a difference between a HTML.ERB or a JS ERB, it still just renders it out. It tries to just do the Ruby syntax highlighting on the JS ERBs.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually two ways to do that. The first one, maybe it's a bug, of my Ruby extension or the Ruby extension in VS Code. We should add this file extension, for the, mark it as it's Ruby, right? Tell the extension is Ruby. And the second way is, on the right bottom, there's a button there, which tells you what kind of language it is. If you click on that, you can, change the language for this file temporarily. You can change it to Ruby directly.
Yeah.
Do you hate wasting hours debugging code every week when you should be working on your app? You should check out our new sponsor, Airbrake.io, a full-stack error monitoring tool that alerts you to errors in your software, then helps you diagnose and fix them. That means no more wasted time searching log files and more time writing and shipping great code. Airbrake supports .NET and all major programming languages. Get set up at getAirbrake.com/CB for a free 30-day trial and the chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card at the end of the month. It's a completely free trial, and you'll be shocked by how much time it saves you. Again, that's airbrake.com/CB. Again, that's getairbrake.com/CB.
All right, I got a question for you. This is a hard one.
Oh, yeah.
What is the font that you use in VS Code?
I think it's Source Code Pro. Yeah,
really?
It's got good, lectures, and it's good for reading.
Very good. All right, that was the hardest question I had for you.
So if people want to jump in and give this a try, what are the best ways for them to do that? I'm assuming you go to code.visualstudio.com and download it, and then what?
Yeah, and then when you install VS Code, there's a welcome page. It tells you how to ramp up with our editor, how to use the command palette, even though like people from Sublime or Atom, they already know the command palette, right? And then you can play with there's a interactive editor in that welcome page. It's called maybe Interactive Playground. You can play with our code snippet formatters and auto indent in that welcome page, actually. So that's the best place for you to get familiar with VS Code. And we do, on that welcome page, we do have several links. One of them is VS Code tips and tricks. So it's a Twitter link, and you can see all the tips and tricks shared by the team and the community. And we do even have a YouTube channel for you to subscribe to. You can see how the team shared how to make VS Code a real productive editor for you.
Nice.
That's really cool. If let's say we have a listener out here who's working on a really esoteric language, and there's no support. There's no support for their language yet in VS Code. Where would you recommend that they go to kind of follow in your footsteps to start writing their own extension, their own plugin? Where would they start?
We have on docs, on code.visualstudio.com, we have a docs session, and it tells you, how to write extensions for VS Code. That's an easy answer, right? We have a good documentation for how to write formatters and linters. But I say, I think if we are going to build a debugger, I think that's one of the most difficult one, right? You need to hook up, a real debugger with, the VS Code. So you need to get an understanding how real debuggers work. So I suggest look at some of the existing debuggers, like our Ruby one, right? From the Ruby one, you can have understanding how the debugging protocol works, how VS Code and the debugger communicate with each other. Yeah, but that's my way. When I learn new things, I always want to read source code instead of reading grammar or books.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask you was what was the extension that you used as a model when you were writing the Ruby one? What did you use as your model? Oh,
I use my Ruby extension and several Rails snippets. Yeah, that's all I have. Otherwise, I used to use RubyMine for the first 30 days because it has the free trial. But later
sure. What I mean is, as you were writing the Ruby extension for Visual Studio Code, was there another extension that you used as a model that you could recommend people look at?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't get that question. Yeah, at the beginning we only have maybe 3 or 4 debuggers, like the PHP one and the Python one. And first of all, I look into the Python one, but the Python one is actually different. It's using the Python library, from Visual Studio. So it's a shared library between VS Code and Visual Studio right now. You can have the same functionality, but it's not for me. So, and then I switched to the PHP one, and I found the PHP one is actually pretty similar to our Ruby, extension. The thing is, for PHP, there's a PHP debug, which is similar to the underlying gem package I'm using, which is called Ruby Debug IDE. That one is maybe PHP Debug IDE or whatever. The protocol is similar. They are using sockets to talk to each other. So that's how I learned how to make a Ruby extension.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I have a question. One of the things that I love about Sublime Text and I don't know who wrote it. I should give them credit, but there's a plugin called Ruby Test, and it's a super clean plugin where I can put my cursor anywhere on my test file, whether it be RSpec, mini test, whatever it might be, and hit Command-Shift-R, and it'll run that single test and dump it into the console of the terminal. Or I can do Command-Shift-E and run every file or every test and in that file. Is that something that VS Code could support? And do you know of anything that does that in there?
Yeah, we can do that. It's a good feature request, actually. Do you want to send me a pull request for that? Actually,
I'll create an issue.
It's actually,
I would love to help. I don't know if I'm capable.
It's doable. Like for the Go extension, we already support that. So from the VS Code side, it's doable. And we can even add code lines to each test, adding some buttons or text before each test. And then you can click on it, run this test or run the whole test in the file. Yeah, from the UI side, it's doable. Yeah, if Sublime can support that, we can do that as well.
You, sir, are a visionary. I like the way you're thinking about that. I'll create the issue on that.
Oh,
I appreciate it. Thanks.
So if people want to contribute, is there a GitHub repository they can go look at then?
Oh, yeah, it's called, the organization name is Ruby IDE, and yeah, the repo name is VS Code-Ruby. Yeah, and then we have a wiki page for that to tell you how to set up everything, tell you the concept behind the debugger, behind the formatters and linters. Yeah.
Awesome.
How long did it take you to get the plugin to the point where it was publicly usable, where you felt like, you know what, I like this. I'm gonna put this out there for everybody to use. Mm-hmm. How long did that take?
A couple hours.
Really?
I was, at that time I was visiting, parents of my girlfriend. Right now my wife. I didn't get anything to do, so yeah, I just pick up my laptop and look at the sample debugger from the documentation side, and then yeah, couple hours. I reached out to the 0.1 version. Before that, I was using RubyMine, right? I was using RubyMine to learn Ruby, and reading the source code of JCode, the engine behind the GitHub page. That's how I learned Ruby. But after 30 days free trial, the license expired. So I either have to pay $200 per year, to JetBrains, or I have to switch to other editors or command lines, right? So I was thinking, yeah, maybe what if I can use VS Code to debug, the Ruby code? And then I searched online and I found there's a very, popular gem package, which is called Ruby Debug IDE. And its description is pretty interesting. It's saying it's an interface, between Ruby debug, the built-in debugger, and IDE is like Eclipse, NetBeans, and RubyMine. So I was like, are you kidding me? The package is just, released by the JetBrains teams. Those geniuses, they open source what they use to make the debugging happen in RubyMine. So I just pick up this thing and write a debug adapter and make them talk to VS Code. So that's just a couple of hours. That's the benefit of open source, I suppose.
So let me just tell you what I just heard. So you're telling me you're at your girlfriend's house with her parents, and you're bored. So you decide in 2 hours to write something that's now used by over 200,000 people.
Oh,
that's amazing.
It's true, but yeah, that's how I learn things. And yeah, I think a lot of products are built this way, right?
Wow. You left out the part where he got a job working on VS Code as a result, right?
Oh yeah, that's my, I know that VS Code is hiring at that time. So, and since at that time there's only only a few debuggers out there. So the team members who is working on the debugger side on VS Code, every time they made an update to the debugging protocol, they will send out notifications to us. They will ping also PHP debug or Go debugger. And yeah, that's how I know them. And then I have a talk with my current manager, and he is a Ruby programmer. He asked quite a few tough Ruby questions, and I can't answer them. But somehow, they think I'm a good candidate.
So what would you say to the listeners who are thinking, I never tried VS Code. I've tried it, and it was a little weird, and I really like my IDE. What's your biggest sales pitch for VS Code over Atom or Sublime or something like that?
So comparing to some of the competitors, we are fast, right? And to some other competitors, I say, the best part of VS Code is we are open source. We open everything, on GitHub. So all our issues are all in GitHub. Our, user feedback, we put that on GitHub. Our planning, we have, a label called iteration plan. Everyone can look at that, every iteration, the beginning of every iteration and the end of the iteration. We have put a plan issue. We have put a end game issue, which covers all the testing we want to do. And if you follow us, you will know what kind of things we are working on. You won't be surprised, if, we are building some magic feature you don't know, or whether we are going to break something. It's all there. I think that's the best thing. We put everything open to our users, and everyone. If you are not satisfied with VS Code, you still love, one feature of your IDE, you can fire an issue to us, and we will respond immediately.
I love it. There's one other thing I'm going to add. Having shared the same bed with so many editors, the VS Code is, I think, the perfect marriage between a true full-out IDE like RubyMine and a simplistic, modifiable editor like Sublime. I think it's somewhere in between. Now, if you like RubyMine but don't like how slow it might be, or how sometimes it doesn't quite work like you want it to, but you're wanting more power than just a typical editor, I think VS Code fits exactly in that niche. Plus, it's a killer JavaScript editor. Oh my gosh, it's good.
Now, I know a few people who listen to this show also use systems like, Elixir or Elm. Brian, help me out. Anything I missed? So do you know if there are plugins for those languages?
Oh, yeah. I know you asked the same question to Eric in JS Jabber, but sorry, I don't know. Yeah, maybe there's one.
Yeah, there's an Elm plugin for sure. I know that because so that's the one I'm using to play around with VS Code is doing some Elm with it.
Nice. And in a couple hours, Penn will have the Elixir one out. I'm just kidding. Go back to the girlfriend's
Actually,
house,
every Elixir developer I know around here uses VS Code. That is the de facto editor for Elixir around here.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, any other questions or topics that we should dive into before we start wrapping up? I will take the silence as nope, I got nothing else. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Do you ever have issues crop up in production that you don't see in development? Do you even know how your app is performing in production? Performance, errors, and analytics to figure out where your app is bogging down are important to keep an eye on. You could try one of those error tracking apps, but why not use a tool that does it all? Try Datadog. Datadog tracks performance, collects data on your errors, and provides you with the information you need to improve your user's experience and fix bugs without having to log into the production server and dig through the logs. What if my app spans across multiple servers and services, you ask? Datadog seamlessly collects metrics from every corner of your application, including services like Amazon AWS and systems like Redis. So whether you want a clear view into your application's performance, need to be notified of new errors, or to keep track of your application across various services you use Datadog. If you go to devchat.tv/Datadog and start a free trial, they'll send you a free Datadog t-shirt. Dave, you want to start us off with picks?
Dang it, why do you always pick me first? Never have time to come up with some.
I think Skype puts you in the top left corner, and that's where I start.
So I guess I'll jump on the Microsoft bandwagon here, and I will pick Azure's Cognitive Services. My aunt from Japan's coming to town to visit soon, and she does not speak any English, and I do not speak any Japanese. So I wrote a quick and dirty Ruby on Rails app used an action cable to create a chat room, and I tied it into the Azure Cognitive Services. So whenever she types in Japanese, on my screen, it translates it into English, and on her side, anything I type in English gets translated to Japanese. So we can sort of try to talk to each other while she's here.
Awesome. That's a cool application of that technology. Brian, what are your picks?
I only have one this week, and it's one that I've picked before, but it's front of mind because I find myself right now in a spot where I'm doing a lot of different things all at once and kind of getting that anxiety and stress and pressure that goes along with it. My lifeline in situations like that is an app for iOS and macOS called OmniFocus. And it looks like a very complex to-do list, but you can customize it to fit different contexts and processes and things like that. And so one of the things that's fantastic about it is that you can divide your projects up into contexts, and the contexts are things like, okay, this is stuff I have to do around the house, and this is stuff I have to do for this job. This is other things that I want to do for this side project. And when it's time to work on those things, you can just focus on that one context, and you don't see all the other things that you have to do. And that's what makes it really, really handy. It can, on iOS, it can integrate with a calendar too. So at a glance, I can see, here's what's going on today. Here are the things that I've said that I'm going to have done by today. Here are the meetings that I have, and it's just really nice to give me that day at a glance. But it keeps me sane, and it keeps me on top of the things that I have to do. So it's OmniFocus, and it's a little pricey, but it's paid for itself many, many times for me.
Awesome. Eric, do you have some picks for us?
Yeah, I do. I've got three. Two of them are in the same ballpark. I recently started up a company with a friend, and we went through the whole landing page. So I've realized about myself, if you want to waste as much time as possible, get two senior architect engineers together and say, build a landing page, and they will argue for 4 days on what technology to use. And that's literally what happened. It was just insane. And at the end of the day, we're like, man, we're stupid. So we ended up using a Hugo CMS. Absolutely incredible. If you want to create a quick landing page that gives you a lot of, not just landing page, but a blog. It's like Octopress. It's like the new Octopress, but it really gives you tons of free templates. It lets you do the scaffolding and templates correctly. It does it really well where you can swap templates in and out. Beautiful. Then there's a couple of places where we could host it. The one we ended up on is Netlify. Netlify is a super inexpensive hosting platform that you can just launch. It'll tie directly to your GitHub. You can tell it what branch to use, what command you want it to run when it launches, and you can set environment variables, all that stuff. And right now we're not even paying for it. It's just an incredibly great service. And finally, about this company that I'm a part of, CodeSponsor. CodeSponsor is my project of passion. We are trying to help sustain open source code. And the way we're doing so is we are connecting sponsors with open source projects. So if you are an open source code developer and you would like to be paid anonymously by sponsors, this is a way to do it. And that's what I got.
Awesome. There's so much I could say about that, but definitely go check out CodeSponsor.
Codesponsor.io.
Yeah. Terrific idea, and just kind of it kind of divorces I have a corporate sponsor from I have a corporate influencer, and that's one thing that I really like about it. So I'm going to jump in here with a few picks. So last weekend, I had to build a set of stairs for my dad because he has trouble getting in and out of his house. And so my father-in-law and I went over there. Anyway, it was really, really interesting. I may have picked the tools that I used last week. But anyway, I'm just going to throw out there. I've been rather burned out lately just from some of the things that I'm trying to juggle all at the same time. So just going out and having a project that's not code, or at least, isn't all code. So you could do like hardware if you wanted to with Raspberry Pi, or build a 3D printer, or, anything like that. For me, a lot of times it's working on my car or building something with wood. So anyway, I'm going to pick just kind of real world projects that way. I'm also going to quickly shout out, this is something that I use periodically and I've been really happy with. The outcomes I'm getting so far is Upwork. So for the podcast show notes and things like that, I hired some folks off of Upwork to help me get the show notes done. The editor for the show is a super great guy, but I didn't find him on Upwork. He was actually a referral, and I've been really happy with his work. Anyway, they have been super solid with getting this stuff out. We were behind for a little while. That was partially due to the people I had editing the shows before this current group of people. I hired a company, they didn't work out. I hired another company, they didn't work out. So then I just hired some people directly, and they are finally getting us all the way caught up. So anyway, I'm really happy with that. So if you're looking for some quality workers, sometimes you have to go through a few people before you find them, but they are on there on Upwork.com. Penn, do you have some picks for us?
Oh yeah, I have two. The first one is a paper from Rob Pike, which is called the text editor Sam. Sam is a interactive text editor created by him, and this paper is about how Sam is designed and how that's implemented. And this paper was written 30 years ago. And so if you are not satisfied with any existing editor or IDE like VS Code, you don't like it, you can read this paper and grasp an idea of where to start. And it's a good practice for learning Ruby as well. Like the founding member of Atom Editor, Nansen Sobel, before he built Atom, he was about to build a text editor himself, and he started with a grammar parsing engine which is called Treetop, and that's written in Ruby. But somehow later on, he was convinced to write editors in JavaScript. But I think we should still go in this way, write things in Ruby and write an editor. And the second one is I need to give a big shout out to Ruby Weekly. Ruby fans may already familiar with it, but my very first users were from Ruby Weekly. After I built my first version of my Ruby extension, I reached out to Peter Kruber and asked him if he can recommend my Ruby extension, and he did that real quick. So thank you to Ruby Weekly, and that's a good Ruby email list for articles and news. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. I love Peter to death. He's so awesome, and he's one of the original members of the Ruby Rogues panel. So. Oh
yeah,
that sultry British sound.
That's right.
I missed it so much. You and him, you guys have like the opposite of voices. He's like so pleasant to listen to.
I appreciate that. So, Penn, if people want to follow you on Twitter or GitHub or see what you're working on these days, what should they do?
Oh, you can just search Rebonics. Yeah, that's always me.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you all for coming, and we will catch everyone next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.